Welcome to the Explainer. So, get this. A recent study found that nearly half of all unvetted corporate AI rollouts are actually pulled back within just a few months. Crazy, right? Today, we are tackling a massive challenge that pretty much every organization is facing right now. How do you actually evaluate AI use cases? We're going to learn how to transition from just guessing about AI safety to building a highly structured, totally defensible evaluation framework. So, if you've ever felt unsure about whether an AI tool should be let loose on a specific task, well, you are in the exact right place.
Okay, let's dive into this. You know that vague unease you feel when someone suggests automating a really critical process with AI? That is a completely normal, highly valid reaction. But in a professional setting, a gut feeling just isn't enough to make a business decision. We've got to replace that unease with hard, justifiable logic. We literally need a definitive way to prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that a use case is safe to launch before we ever flip the switch.
So, here is our roadmap for today's explainer. Think of it like a funnel, where we pour in an idea and filter it down. We'll cover 1. Moving beyond gut feelings. 2. The 4 delegation criteria. 3. Finding the load-bearing pillar. 4. The 3 AI classifications. 5. Constructing the human gate. And finally, 6. The framework and practice.
All right, kicking things off with part 1, moving beyond gut feelings, taking it from vague unease to defensible calls.
Which brings us to section 2, the 4 delegation criteria. This is your screening ecosystem.
The fundamental shift we need to make here is realizing that evaluating AI isn't just a vibe check. It has to be a structured evaluation. We do this by passing every single idea through an interactive screening ecosystem made up of 4 criteria. The first one, reversibility. You really have to ask yourself, can a wrong output be caught and undone before it actually causes harm? If the answer is no, those irreversible consequences sharply raise the bar. I mean, imagine an AI accidentally sending a massively incorrect pricing contract directly to a key client. Once it hits their inbox, you can't just hit undo. The risk skyrockets immediately.
Next up, the second criterion is consequence of error. What is the actual, tangible cost if the output is just flat out wrong? And listen, we aren't just talking financial cost here. It could be reputational, regulatory, or even operational. Nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to be the company on the front page of the news for a wild AI hallucination. A higher consequence of error demands significantly more human control, or honestly, it might rule the AI use case out completely. The stakes matter deeply.
Then we absolutely have to consider the human element. Ask yourself, does this task require nuanced judgment, complex relationship building, or genuine care that an AI simply cannot supply? This is so vital. Regardless of how technologically capable a model gets, some work just has to stay human, because the actual value lies in the human connection itself. When things get personal or complex, people want to deal with people.
In wrapping up the criteria, we have accountability. Basically, who is answerable for the outcome? And crucially, can that accountability be actively exercised over an AI-produced result? You cannot simply transfer accountability to a machine learning model. Think about it. You literally can't fire an algorithm. A human or an organization must ultimately stand behind and answer for the work being produced.
Moving right along to section 3, finding the load-bearing pillar. Let's look at how these criteria actually interact.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that these 4 criteria aren't just a simple pass-or-fail checklist. They actually interact in dynamic and fascinating ways to determine the true risk of a use case. Let's look at a comparison. Take drafting a condolence note to a client. Extremely low stakes and entirely reversible, right? But the human relationship holds all the weight here. A real person should own that. On the flip side, imagine an AI generating a financial summary for a massive executive decision. That has huge consequences. But if a named human reviewer rigorously signs off on those numbers before they are used, accountability and reversibility are beautifully restored.
So the practical rule here is this. Run all 4 criteria on a use case, and then find the load-bearing criterion. This is the big aha moment of the entire framework. The load-bearing criterion is the specific pillar that, if it were tweaked or changed, would move the use case entirely into a different risk classification. Pinpointing and naming this load-bearing pillar is exactly how you justify your decision to a strict risk or compliance reviewer. It's your ultimate defense.
Section 4. The 3 AI classifications. It is time to start sorting your use cases.
Once you rigorously run your proposed ideas through the criteria, they will inevitably sort into one of 3 distinct buckets:
And because you've done the analytical legwork, each one is going to have a documented rationale. First bucket, fully appropriate. These are highly reversible, low-consequence tasks with no special human element required. You can just delegate these with a normal review process. Second, appropriate with human review. These are useful applications, but the stakes actively require a formalized human gate. And finally, inappropriate. This is where high consequences, irreversibility, or a required human element means AI absolutely should not perform the task, ever.
On to Section 5, constructing the human gate. This is arguably the most misunderstood classification.
So this appropriate with human review classification is where people tend to get it wrong the most. Why? Because they just stop at the label. They throw the label on the project and vaguely say, oh, we'll keep a human in the loop. That is lazy and, frankly, completely unacceptable for real-world operations. So the crucial point is that a defined gate establishes exactly 3 rigid things. Step 1, who reviews, meaning the specific role with actual accountability. Step 2, what they verify, the precise risk like factual accuracy that they are explicitly trained to catch. And step 3, when it happens, which must be before the output is ever used or sent. If you don't have this exact who, what, and when locked down tight, you aren't ready to launch.
And finally, Section 6, the framework in practice. Let's look at a worked use case portfolio.
We've built the funnel, now let's pour some real-world examples into it and put it to the test rapid-fire style. Let's start with an easy one, the use case, drafting an internal FAQ from approved policy documents. The call? Fully appropriate. The reasoning here is crystal clear. It's entirely reversible before publication, the stakes are incredibly low if there happens to be a typo, and factual grounding is readily available. It clears the criteria with flying colors.
Now let's look at a hard no. The use case is generating a final medical or legal determination. The call is unequivocally inappropriate. Why? Because the consequences of an error in this scenario are highly irreversible, and there's strict professional accountability that simply cannot transfer to a piece of software. A licensed human professional absolutely must make and ultimately own this critical determination.
And this brilliantly illustrates the gray area. Let's say you want an AI to draft customer-facing responses to complex billing complaints. This sits right on the line. It's technically reversible, sure, but a wrong answer deeply erodes customer trust and can even carry regulatory weight. The load-bearing criterion here is accountability. So we step up and construct a highly defined gate. A specific support agent reads each AI-drafted response for strict accuracy against the actual account record, and they carefully adjust the tone before it ever sends to the customer. Now that is a safe, actionable AI use case.
The real deliverable of this entire process is being able to articulate exactly why a use case passes or fails. Going into a boardroom and saying, "It feels risky," does not travel well. But saying, "This has an irreversible consequence plus non-transferable accountability," that does. Stop relying on gut feelings and start using this framework to make your AI implementations truly safe and completely defensible. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I want to leave you with this question to chew on. As AI models get smarter and more autonomous every single day, which of your organization's human gates are secretly already rusting away?